Okay. There were cheerleaders, kind of like 6 cheerleaders, and about 6 of Hunter's friends that met downtown. One of the moms took pictures of them. The girls got all dressed up. The boys all wore jeans and my shirt.
Call this workshop of the Bryan Independent School District order. Let the record show the formal board members is present. This workshop has been duly called, and that notice this workshop has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Governing Code, Chapter 551. We do have one member that will not be present today. And so we'll go ahead and start. And are there any citizens' comments at this time? No citizen comments, and we'll move right down into the information items. First up is Texas Education and Human Resources Day, October 14th, 2020.
Good afternoon. October the 14th was the day that Governor Abbott declared that it was National Human Resources Day in the state of Texas, and we are a little bit beyond that timeline, but I wanted to take just a moment and share with you the team in HR. We're a team of 8. We've been the same since we entered this building, and I feel like every year we get stronger and more creative in what we're trying to do for the district. But on the back row, Denise Mitchell, then Athena Cherry, Joe Collins, and Tricia Poppel. And then on the front row is Angela Behrens, Shay Sasinski, myself, Carol King, and Tracy Hilton. And, right now, I think what we're working on is the fingerprint process. And so 5 of these ladies are going to get trained on how to go through the background of fingerprinting. And so they're actually going through the fingerprinting process again and getting their prints done again. And so it's fun in the office, and so I just wanted to take a moment and celebrate and just reintroduce you to these people. They're just wonderful ladies that I get to work with every day. Yay!
I tried to change passwords last night. Yes.
Well, on behalf of the board, we do want to thank the hard work that they do. We know that that's always, at least since I've been on the board, one of the major board goals has been focused on human resources. So we certainly do appreciate all the hard work that they've put in. And next up is a recognition of National Principals Month.
Okay. Ms. Goodman or Dr. Merrill, are either one of you going to? We have a video. Do you all want to say anything? But the Communications Department has put together a pretty neat video to honor our principals. And this is actually showing when they received dinner for 4. And y'all elaborate. These were the dinner deliverers here who went out, and boy, did they make them happy. You want to add anything about the principals here?
Yes, we were thankful in partnership with Communications, Mr. LeBlanc, and we delivered dinner for 4 to all of our campus principals and took pictures, and they were so appreciative. I followed up the next day with them, and they said it was wonderful. It was from Floppy Joe's, correct? And they were just really happy. They had some exciting events on campus as well, where the campus recognized each principal, gave them goodie bags, appreciation lunches, and things like that. So during the month of October, we tried to do our best to ensure that our principals know that we appreciate them, especially during this difficult year. And it's been stressful, so we want to make sure that we show them a little love.
Yeah, our principals are incredible. It's been a blessing to get to work with them and see how over the years grown. There's just tremendous leadership, and I think we see so much of that play out as we're in this pandemic, and just the trust that the community has in them and the local support and engagement that they have. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And I can just say professionally, I'm the beneficiary of so many things, just getting to work with them, but then even personally having kids on 3 different campuses, just getting to watch the leadership and see it play out, just to get to have a wonderful education that my kids love to go to. And, the pandemic got them all excited about coming back to school, just being off for a little bit. And so that excitement has continued. And so we just wanted to say thank you. It's a hard job. It's, if not, one of the most difficult jobs in the district, hands down. And so anything we can do, we appreciate Matthew and everyone's support. And there was a lot of local things going on within their community. A lot of parents sent gifts and did various things, sent notes, which are meaningful. And then the campuses took very good care of them, and we just participated in that. So we're appreciative to be able to bring them lunch and just to say that we care about them and we appreciate them.
I think one thing this year that I've seen particularly is principals always want their students to be happy. They want their students to want to come to school. But this year, a lot of our principals, well, probably all of them, are thinking outside the box and doing some really fun and funny things with and for their students to let them know, we love you, we're so proud of you, thank you for being here. And I'll just bring out Lane Boobin the other day at the Bryan High pep rally, which was an open air pep rally on the track at Merrill Green Stadium. And Lane, being the principal, was just as involved in that pep rally and getting the kids fired up and being a part of it. And a lot of principals kind of back off from that, but just things like that I know our principals are working so hard to give the kids extra love, make them feel, important, and make their parents feel that way too.
We have video of Mr. Boobin being a part of the halftime show dancing. So we will use that at some point, I'm sure, in a meeting to start off. But this is a video created by our communications department. It's about a minute long.
It should be running. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but it should be running. And it's been all over social media too.
All right, great. And certainly we do appreciate our principals and recognize the challenges that they face this year. So on behalf of the board, please extend them our gratitude and recognition. All right, on to item 3, the board goal update for workforce.
So I get to come back up here and talk about workforce and the board goals, and it's kind of what we do in the HR office with the 8 people that get to work in the office. And so I'd like to go through my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about how we came up to these goals that we've developed. So just a quick overview and a reminder, the board goal development, our vision, Children First Always. Our mission for the Bryan ISD is Bryan ISD through innovation and choice of educational offerings will provide positive experiences that ensure high school graduation and post-secondary success. These are our goals that you guys developed a while back, and I'm going to elaborate more on goal 3, which is the workforce this morning, or this afternoon, I guess. The committee I got to work with was the Finance Committee, and these are the members of the Finance Committee, Mr. McCall, Ms. Harlan, and Mr. Stasny, and they were able to work with me and talk about the goals as I presented them earlier. And then, once again, this is our workforce goal, is to recruit and maintain high-quality workforce through competitive benefits and differentiated professional learning. So one of the goals that we decided that was very important is the employee job satisfaction. And so we In the fall of 2019, we were able to administer an employee survey, and that's going to be the source, our baseline source for our goals out of the workforce section. And so we're going to say that employee job satisfaction will increase from 76% to 80% at the end of the annual survey this year in spring 2021. And then we went on and developed another goal, and it was regarding benefits. And so benefits will increase from 79% as evidenced in the fall 2019 survey, will increase from 79% to 82% as evidenced in the spring 2021 survey. And then indicator number 3 is employee satisfaction regarding support from a mentor. We know that teachers, whether it's teachers, assistant principals, custodial workers, whatever, having someone that walks beside them and gives them support. And we are currently as of fall 2019 at 77%, but we'd like to see that increase to 80% in the spring of 2021. And then support from professional learning. I mean, Brian Oste does a phenomenal job of supporting teachers, supporting whoever in professional learning and engagement, and it's already at 77%, and we'd like to see that go to 80%. And I just feel like the team that Barbara puts out with her teaching and learning, curriculum support, we have technology support, everybody supporting and giving professional development, whether it's learning how to do, and we've all become experts in Zoom this year, to how we break down the test scores and look at that, and then how we put that back into our classrooms for instruction is all very important, and we do a great job with that process. Indicator 5. In the past, we've had a group called the Teacher Retention Task Force, and it was composed of board members and principals and teachers across the district, and we did a survey. And these 3 things that I'm going to talk about next were always the top 3 things that were important to people, to teachers across the board. And so one of the number one indicator that was in this survey was that teachers indicated that principal support is one of the 3 most important factors when considering employment in a district. Employee satisfaction regarding principal support will increase from 79% to 82%, and once again, we're using the spring 21 survey. It's really important. I think we've got a great principal team, and as you see from the previous presentation, we have phenomenal principals. They're supportive, and they really get out and take care of their teachers all the time, and they are engaging with students, and so that's really important for our teachers. Another indicator that teachers said was important was employee satisfaction regarding meaningful work, and it's already at 87%, but we're asking that it will go to 90%. And so I think teachers currently, based on the survey, feel like what they do is very meaningful, whether it's the relationships they have with students, whether it's developing and implementing curriculum in the classroom and teaching, but it's very important to teachers that they feel like what they're doing is contributing to the success of students. And then the last goal I'd like to present is the employee satisfaction regarding their work environment. And it's important that they feel like they're supported all the time, that they go to a safe building, and so we're going to ask that increases from 71% to 74%.
Carol, can I ask a question?
You may.
Okay, the slide before, they felt 87% is a good number to start from.
Mm-hmm.
They felt very supported. So then on the next, the 6, or 5, sorry, on that one, what do you think is one or several reasons for the difference in the 87% feeling supported, particularly by the principal, to the environment? Is it a safety, building? What do you think? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, I don't mean to do that, but is there anything that we as a board can
I think as the board, you guys do a great job with supporting campuses, principals, and teachers. I think that y'all put procedures in place for that to happen. As far as what environment, it can be a variety of things. I mean, it's hard to say, Ruthie,
Sure.
what it may be.
And that's something we can work on,
Mhm.
all the different committees, from safety to finance,
Right.
and keep up with you and you keep up with us and work on that particularly.
We don't always, I guess, I'm not sure we always get all the survey information or look at all the survey information we do get. And that's certainly an area where I think what you're saying is it'd be helpful to get the comments, because I assume comments are still allowed on the survey.
They
correct?
are,
So
yes.
that could shed a lot of light on what is the reason for the relatively low, I mean, it's still decent, but it's still, I mean, I agree with you, a lot of room for improvement there.
Absolutely.
I hope that we can evaluate that, maybe even as a board, get almost feedback on what's causing that.
And it could be not something BISD is doing, it could be something we're not doing. So, just,
We're fixing to release the fall survey, and so we'll get some information, and I will be back at some point, probably in December, after it closes, and until we compile the data, back to you guys in December to share what was reported at that point in time. So maybe that will give us a lot more information about what they are saying at this point is employee, the satisfaction of this environment and the work environment.
I'll just jump in and say that I think it's great that we're doing the survey and that it's great to be aspirational. However, I don't know that we know the impacts of our current environment with COVID and masks and remote learning and all the things happening. I worry about one like this related to environment because I know it's all those external factors that impact this one question on the survey. So is this one question or is this several questions that inform environment?
This is one question on there. You know, but to be honest, I think that as far as work environment, even you could take out COVID, but I think for the most part, for those people that are on campuses, it's been fantastic since we started school. I mean, of course, it's less kids in the building and things of that nature that have an impact on the environment. But I think that the teachers that are there, the support they're getting, and all those factors come in, and it's been very positive to what they're feeling about the environment they're teaching in this year. It's going to be unusual to have fall 19 as a baseline when it was regular school versus what we're doing this year in a COVID-impacted school
And that's
year.
the only thing I'm saying is that we need to put it in the context of what's happening currently. We can be doing the absolute very best job possible, and there's still a lot of things beyond our control.
Absolutely.
yeah.
And when you're stressed, that does affect how you answer things
Sure.
of any form. One thing though, this might get teased out a little bit more in some of the other types of questions too, culture, climate, safety, that type of feeling as though you have someone who's there to help you. This one is almost like all encompassing of several others that we may be able to use the feedback to help us grow as well.
And I hope we get some comments that tell us the pros and the negatives, I mean, I'd like to hear that. So you can't make yourself better unless you know what you need to work on.
I totally agree, and that's one of the goals here, I think overarching wise, as we start to look at these elements is what can we learn to improve? How can we improve? And my first inclination is certainly with Dr. Harlan and some of the other issues that were expressed from the committee level, as well as here, and that this is a very unique time. I think it's also an opportunity for us to approach issues in a uniquely different way. And some of those I think, impact here. And I'll just give you, I know as we're moving into the holidays, as we're moving in with a much higher stress level, be it the news that we turn on every night, or be it COVID and not being able to take the vacations that we normally have taken by now to recharge and rejuvenate, you know, I think it's going to be a much heavier, if I can use that word, Christmas time of feeling. And so I think part of this is not only just what we learn in the survey immediately after, but how we also can look at how we can reach out a little bit differently to support those staff members that may or may not be able to go home like they normally would, you know. And I know this has become a big issue on campus up at A&M, and I think that, but just within the last few weeks, you know, but just that recognition that it is a more stressful environment now, and how we respond also gets reflected in those surveys as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one comment. I don't think we can thank people enough right now for all the things that they're doing that are above and beyond what they traditionally do. And it's not to say that they haven't already been working hard. It's just everyone is really stepping up. So I just want to take a moment to thank folks.
And our new Essential 8 this month just started, gratitude. So yes, it's a very good time to remember that we need to stop and say thank you to everybody out there who's helping make everything happen. So good reminder.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is the advanced academics update.
Good afternoon. Mrs. Richardson is out ill today, and so I'll be playing the role of Christina Richardson today. Thankfully, she has prepared me. She does a phenomenal job, as you guys know. But she couldn't be here today, and so in her stead, I will present the advanced academics update to the board. So we want to start out basically first with an overview of the programs that we offer. Since Christina's come into this role, she's really transformed the whole continuum of support to students, from the younger grades all the way up to the senior level. And I think that's the part, one of the things I'm most proud about, is making sure that there are pathways starting in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade to support students and wherever they're at in their educational journey. All the way from GT Pull-Out and then into the Explore Academy that was started a few years ago at Ross Elementary, our dual language program in partnership with the Department of Bilingual Education, into intermediate and middle school with Inquire and Odyssey Academies, and then over into honors, pre-AP and IB, advanced placement, AP Capstone, International Baccalaureate, and then of course dual credit offerings at our collegiate high school. The whole spectrum is there, and so the opportunities for students to participate in advanced academics there's a multitude of offerings. So I'd like to start briefly by going over each one of these programs, and again, it's going to be in brief, it's an update. But GT K4 Pull-Out, we have two instructional coaches that specifically work with elementary age students, and they provide pull-out services for enrichment and extension activities. This year looks a little different. Some of these are virtual, some of these are face-to-face, but it's really exciting to see even the different ways in which they're doing pull-out in a virtual capacity. They're using, for example, a software called Jamboard. And essentially, think about a 3D poster presentation, and the student develops it digitally over time with the teacher and is able to collaborate with them over the period of time when they develop the project. And it can have video embedded on it, and it can have text and imagery. It can even have handwriting embedded on it. So it's really, it's a fun way to interact and teaching kids new tools at a very young age. But this has been going very well. Parent response has been great, kid response has been great, and the teachers appreciate the additional support to work with a group of students who need to be taken further than where they are in a particular subject or in their area of giftedness. We also have the dual language program, and Dr. Baker recently has presented to the board about that program. But again, knowing that it's expanding, it continues to grow at a grade level at a time at Crockett Elementary as we've been transitioning in additional classrooms over there for dual language. Pleased to see the numbers continue to be strong for that program. The Explore Academy at Ross Elementary, we screen students in kindergarten, and look for different levels of giftedness. And students who have a higher level of giftedness are invited to apply for the Explore Academy for grades 1 through 4. Next year, we'll be introducing something new to the 4th grade experience. I think we've talked about it here before as well, but they'll be taking the PSAT as 4th graders. We do have some students in that program that are very advanced in reading and others very advanced in mathematics. And so it helps us kind of ascertain where their areas of giftedness lie and how we can best support their continued development and acceleration. Sir?
I know you're probably dependent on your ability to respond, but how many students are in each grade level in school?
No more than 22. It typically is between 18 and 22 depending on the grade level, typically.
Well, I know we have to pull out. I guess it's maybe not the time to ask questions, especially with Christina not being here, but when I look at the intermediate and middle school level and high school level, there's obviously a lot more numbers, opportunities for kids to be involved in advanced activities. This seems a lot more limited, and I don't know enough about pull out, I guess, to feel excited about that. I know we've had pull out for a long, long time, I'm pretty sure in the district in one form or another. And I don't know how often they get pulled out, how effective that is, because you're having to leave the regular classroom and so on. Do you
Sure.
want to comment on any of that?
Sure, I would actually. So what you'll find in terms of the distribution of student population of students who are identified as gifted is a lot of them end up in our dual language program. They seek out the dual language program. Prior to, I think, 2 years ago, we had embedded gifted services within the traditional classroom. There wasn't a pull-out system necessarily at every campus. Dr. Whitbeck approved the allocation to give us an instructional coach to begin doing those things and to expand that under Christina. And so that's when we switched back to a more formalized pull-out process where there are regular, I'll lie if I give you the frequency, so I'll go back and double check myself on the frequency. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to misspeak. But so now there's much more regular pull-out, where before it was maybe a differentiated assignment in the classroom. We used to call them the purple folders way back in the day, the purple folder activities. And the kid would go to a station, they'd have a purple folder activity because they were on the GT pull-out program, but it was embedded in the classroom. And so it's actually become more formalized than it has been in the past 2 years in particular. But you'll see large numbers of our gifted students do end up in our dual language program. And then those that score at the higher levels on the COGAT and then the other assessments that we produce or that we administer for students are invited to attend the Explore Academy. But you'll also find a large number in particular elementary that want to stay at their home campus. They want to stay with their neighborhood schools and their friends. And so to allow that, that's why we provide the GT pull-out where it's more purposeful and targeted at the home campus so that they can stay with those neighborhood peers. And then as they escalate through the system and matriculate through the system, they have Inquire and Odyssey. But essentially there are 3 options at the elementary level: dual language, Explore, and then on-site GT pull-out. I hope that helps, but certainly I'll get the frequency.
And it really was a big factor because, as she was saying, about a lot of families that just for their own reasons would rather not have one of the children go to a different school, especially if they have multiple siblings in the family. They'd rather have one school, so therefore they may have not declined going to the specialized GT program at Ross. And so that's why, even with transportation provided, which we do, so just to remind you, it's just, that's why we thought we need to reach another group, and how can we do that more? And so that's why we intensified that pull-out to make sure that we were covering kind of all of our bases.
Well, that's one of the things I'm pretty proud about. I don't think the majority of districts provide transportation like we do for things like this, and that really kind of levels the playing field in terms of our ability to take advantage of it. I guess my question had to be at least partially with, I know it's not an application process, which at least that's what I've been told.
Correct.
It's basically based on other factors. I just can't help but wonder how many parents would have perhaps high-achieving kids who would really like to be involved in that, but there's just not enough slots. And so I don't know if that means eventually expanding Explore if it becomes appropriate. And and again, that's beyond, I don't think we need to take this any further today. I'm just throwing that out that,
Certainly.
that I really want to make sure that when parents are attracted to Bryan or looking at Bryan, that there's no chance that they're going to look at it and say, well, it looks good from intermediate on up, and I'm not so sure about the elementary. We want to feel
That's
good about
exactly the
both.
same reason. You're right, Mr. Stasny, that why we wanted to expand and be more purposeful in what that structure looks like for our elementary. And that's been one of Christina's big changes since she's been in the role that she's really focused on, is shoring up what that support looks like at the elementary level, so that there's a wide range of opportunities there as well.
One other question, since we're on that, in terms of how kids are identified.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, we changed that process too, so that
Yes.
parents can recommend that kids be tested.
Yes, ma'am. So it's actually every student in kindergarten is tested with COGAT, and then any parent can also request. But we found that, again, before all of this, not every student's parent was asking for their child to be tested. So to remove that from the equation, so all kids are considered, every student is tested at the kindergarten level in particular, and then once again, if there are any requests by teacher or by parent.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks.
I know that Barbara, I don't know, a couple meetings ago, we were talking about, especially starting about this level, and I like that the PSAT is given because we're trying to identify some potential merit scholars,
Yes, ma'am.
and starting at this level with that, where it begins, I mean, not where it begins, because we can identify them really younger, but that's really neat because that's going to be one of our big pushes.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly why it's so important to identify each student's area of talent, right? And in particular in this situation, how do we take them to that next level? If they are a little unique in terms of their mathematics skills, okay, then how do we help them? How do we keep them socially appropriate with their peers, but then take their mathematics to the level where they can succeed to their potential? This is exactly why that was designed, absolutely. So moving into intermediate school, we have 2 academies, and they of course partner up with middle school, Inquire. The Inquire Academy focuses on the GT student as well as high-performing learners, and its focus, it's shifted in the past several years and developed, and it's about global leadership and making sure these students are really taking a leadership strand, thinking about our E8, and then also thinking about the world in which we live, making sure that these students who get access to the pre-AP and the Inquire courses are also taking it with a sense of leadership and ownership to carry their learning further. Sometimes that involves research, sometimes it involves working with outside entities and companies and business people. It kind of depends on what their area of focus has been. But the Inquire Academy is at Jane Long, and you can see over 5th and 6th grade, and all the way actually she has up there through 8th grade. There are 391 students in the Inquire and in the Inquire program. And they do a number of projects. Obviously, some of these pictures are from last year, pre-pandemic, some of these presentations. But they do a lot of presentations. They do a lot of different research projects. Again, kind of following when it was originally designed, the International Baccalaureate Pathway was built on the Middle Years program, and now kind of morphing into global education and leadership. The Odyssey Academy, its counterpart, is at Rayburn and then also at SFA Middle School. This particular population is focused on STEM education, and the board will probably remember the National Institute of Science and Education designated both Rayburn and SFA as certified sites. And they work with, a lot of different projects. I know Mr. Kuhn has been in here before, Mr. Knudsen, a lot of great projects for our students. And there's just a few of them there, some from this year, and then I think there might be one in there from the year prior. And we're gonna keep going through that one. Most recently, SFA's Odyssey program also competes in the Technology Student Association, and they've been in here before, but they took the team's Best In-State Award for 2020. That's pretty exciting since they placed first in Texas in all categories. So tremendous work and leadership from Mr. Kuhn and Mr. Knudsen and the students and the staff at SFA to make sure students were successful or prepared to be successful and be competitive in that arena. along with the Sea Perch competition, which, as you probably know, is the underwater robotics competition. As we move into the high school years, we have advanced placement courses. We have over 1,200 students taking AP courses at any one of our high schools. All 3 high schools are looking at additional offerings to make sure there is a robust selection of courses to afford students these opportunities. And we had 69 AP scholars, and those are students who passed a certain number of exams with a 3 or higher. And just in general, how are our students performing on advanced placement courses? I'll hit the top 2 the most here. All campuses not only increased the number of students taking AP exams, and that's during the pandemic, but they also outperformed themselves over the year prior. So those are 2 markers that we look at: more participation and higher outcomes for kids, even given a pandemic. That was a tremendous effort on the part of their teachers and the campus administration. We have AP Capstone at Rudder High School, and this is an exciting year. This is the year that we get into AP Seminar. So not only do you take AP courses as part of the Capstone program, but you take 2 courses in particular, AP Research and AP Seminar. And each student identifies their own special research project that they're going to work with. And we also partner them with, it's on a different slide, I'm gonna skip ahead and then I'll come back, not to make you dizzy, but 51 different mentors in the community. Some of these are at A&M, some of these are in business and industry. It depends on whatever that student's area of research happens to be. And they partner with the student and they develop a research project with them. And I'll play just a quick little segment, if you don't mind, Mr. LeBlanc. This is from the AP Capstone teachers. They created this video to showcase the program at Rudder High School.
I want to research how parental deportation negatively affects the well-being of the U.S. citizen children. I want to mainly focus on the psychological and behavioral
That's fine. No worries, that's perfect.
changes that they go through, and why they're hesitant on reaching out for help.
I want to research about the importance for the education system in intermediate and above, help incorporate all 8 intelligences.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. So this video is approximately, I think, 2.5, 3 minutes long, but it's wonderful because each student who's in AP Seminar talks about what their research project is about. And it's exciting to see just the depth and the passion behind their research projects, and hopefully it'll lead them into some pretty exciting future careers as well. So we'd love, I can't wait until they do their presentations. Their research projects also come with an oral presentation component. And so we're talking about bringing a few of the top projects back to the board so that you could hear an abbreviated version of their projects. So we'll be working and bringing that back to you in the spring as we go throughout this year. But this is the first year for the seminar aspect of the AP Capstone program. So we're really excited to see it take off. I did miss a couple of slides, but I think I've encapsulated everything. Christina will she's probably at home watching this telling me to go back 3 slides and say something else, but she's not here, so I get to. International Baccalaureate is at Bryan High School, and I know that's been around for quite a number of years now, but it continues to thrive and to grow, and the faculty continues to develop and to really be able to support students in unique ways, so much so that 8 subjects had a 100% pass rate. And that's pretty exciting on those IB exams. Again, during a pandemic, that can be a struggle. But our teachers, again, did what needed to be done to support our students and couldn't be more proud of the work of everyone. The IB program, Mr. LeBlanc, if you don't mind playing again about 15, 20 seconds, similarly does research projects. Well, that's all right. So it's okay, we'll go on. This particular video, and again, I'll email it to you so that you can see it, is a student talking about her research project, and it involves critical care units, and in particular in relation to COVID, and the psychological impact on a physician in a critical care unit to have a patient who passes and it's outside of their control versus a hospice setting, and so just kind of what those dynamics look like for healthcare professionals. And it was very interesting, and she did a nice job of kind of hooking you at the beginning with why would this matter? Why is this important? So again, really coached well by her teachers and has a great future ahead of her. Very exciting to see. And you can see a few of the other current research projects there from other students as well. And then, of course, there's Bryan Collegiate High School, which is a TEA, Early Collegiate High School designation. And again, the focus here is to attain dual credit college hours. For some, that does mean associates, but that is typically not the goal of this program, but rather to become core complete. And so that when they enter that first year of college that's outside of Glenn and Bryan ISD, they have the basics and the foundation down, and they're able to build upon that, while still giving them choice in terms of perhaps what their major may be. Sometimes we change those majors, and we want to make sure we don't go so many hours that that's not possible for students. But again, Bryan Collegiate High School was recently named, once again, U.S. News and World Report Top High Schools in America for 2020. So excited to celebrate that once again with Collegiate, as well as several other spotlights from great schools and then also TEA. So,
Whoever wrote that article was a very special person.
That's exactly right. So you see on the screen before you the application timelines and kind of how that looks, and if there's no application, what it looks like, and what those windows of time are. We are coming up on that time frame of the year where we'll open up applications for a number of our programs, and then we'll begin screening for others that require the CODAT or what have you. But I'm excited to see the continued development and the work of Mrs. Richardson and the team in advanced academics at the campuses, and look forward to coming back and telling you more about their successes in the future. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you, knowing that I am not Mrs. Richardson?
So on the GT pullout for kindergartners, it says that they're identified in January of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
But that appeared to go for kindergarten, first, second, third, and fourth grade. But I don't see an indicator of a child being able to be retested, or how does a family identify in the second grade that they feel like
Sure.
their child is exceeding.
So we're actually required by law to post notices at the elementaries, whether that's through a newsletter or on the doors, that application for screening is open. And so we do that through the Tuesday folder, and then we also do it through newsletters, where we advertise to parents that if you'd like your child screened, just let us know, we'll be glad to do so. We also actually provide screenings for a number of students who are considering coming in or who are residents of the area as well. And so it has to be on the doors of the school. And Mrs. Richardson also responds to a lot of calls for that sort of question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One of the things that I just might add, because this is an area that I spent a lot of time in my career early on, working in with GT and all these things that we've talked about. And one of the things I'm really proud of here that is different than a lot of places is how open it is. And even so much as a pre-AP class being open enrollment, that is not the case everywhere. Many times you have to have X on a STAR test, X grade average, and our counselors will guide the kids, of course. If they're not passing, then that may not be the best move to take the pre-AP class. But they are open enrollment, and the same with the mass testing in the kindergarten, to not lose track of a potential child that might be gifted out there that we just might not know yet. And so I do see a difference in that, and I think that's something that we should be proud of, and that we need to continue in that direction of being very open and trying not to miss any kids who may not have parents who advocate for themselves.
So I would be remiss and probably taken to task when I get home if I did not mention, just again, recognize the team's competition and TSA. And part of the things that I want to mention about that is that a lot of these programs have migrated up into high schools where principals have been open. It may not have been a high school program, years ago, but as the students start to develop and found a spot within those programs, principals have worked also just as diligently to make sure that they can continue. And I know that I've heard this stat over and over again, never found it published, so don't ask me to send you the research article. But one of the key indicators for college success, not just entry into college, but college success, that a lot of people have been looking at, is leadership. Leadership within a club, leadership development, taking, finding that success early. And I think with all these different programs, there's plenty of avenues are lots of avenues. I don't know if there's ever enough, but there's lots of avenues that y'all work very hard to pull together for our kids. The reason I might get in trouble because TSA, the actual president of Texas this year, is my daughter Caroline, and so she came through that Odyssey program and was elected president. So I would be amiss if I didn't, mention congratulations to the Odyssey for their on behalf of the TSA president as well. But I am excited about the opportunities. I'm excited about everything here. I think Mrs. Waller mentioned it. I think we really like to see these come together. How do these accumulate? We've had these programs here, how do we close the gap on the National Merit Scholar, right? How do we keep that? And I know that's something that y'all have all been working on and talking about. And so, because I do think that's, not only is it the leadership aspect, but it's that scholarly aspect that can close and really demonstrate that not only are these kids finding their voice and finding their leadership and finding their opportunities, but they're being able to demonstrate that knowledge as well. Very excited. Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you. You can give your reports to Christine on how I did.
All right, next up we have the Europe Partnership and Grant with Texas A&M University.
This one is also partnered with Christina Richardson, but also Mrs. Willett. So Mrs. Willett's going to come and speak on behalf of Europe. It's nice and crossed for you. It is a little sorry about that. Don't lean on it. You got the ink stuff.
All right. Thank you very much for allowing me to come talk about Europe 2020 today. We are really excited to announce the awarding of this grant, and we're excited to announce our new partnership with Texas A&M University. The Heart of Texas Europe Grant 2020 was a collaboration between Texas A&M College of Education, primarily staffed through the Educational Psychology Department, and with Bryan ISD. It will be under teaching and learning under the direction of Dr. Ybarra, but then with Ms. Richardson and myself, because of the focus on advanced academics and planning for college and social emotional well-being of our students, myself. A little background information on what GEAR-Up actually is. GEAR-Up is a federally funded program through the U.S. Department of Education, and it is designed to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to enter and succeed in post-secondary education. Though the primary focus started because of students of low income, it serves the whole entire cohort of that particular grade level, which is grade 7. So that will be our current 7th graders, which is cohort 2026. The program is designed to provide academic intervention and support for students and families through the college preparation process. There are a number of overarching goals that are a part of GEAR-Up. The first one, obviously, is academic performance and increased high school graduation rates. So down the left side, you will see the overarching goals, and on the right are those methods and things that we are going to focus on to try to meet some of those goals. Also included is student preparation for success when they get to college, increased knowledge about career and opportunities that are out there for them, awareness of the matriculation process. How do you fill out an application? How do you do the financial aid? All of that incorporates not just working with the kids, but it's also talking about working with the families. And then from our point of view, how do we sustain some of this stuff that we put in place because of the grant funding that we received? How can we keep some of that in place after the grant cycle is over? I kind of did a timeline because this is a unique situation. We actually applied for this grant back in 2018, and unfortunately, we were not awarded the grant at that time, but we missed the qualifying score by less than a point, all right? Fast forward to 2020, and the Department of Education, because of the pandemic, said, no, we're not putting out a new grant application. We're going to go back and look at those folks that applied for the grant back in 18 and 19 to see where there are applications that think, oh yeah, we should have awarded at that time. And then we found out at the end of September that we received that grant at that point. Yeah, we're excited. Now, where are we? Well, by January, our goal is to have hired the project coordinator, which is actually will be an administrative type position, and then the 2 outreach specialists that will work right now primarily at Davila and SFA. When the students in that cohort move from middle school to high school, those 2 outreach specialists will move with them. They will continue to support as they move through high school. Those next 4 years, we will focus on that financial aid, how to get them prepared, how can we support the parents through that process, and then they reach graduation at 2026. This grant actually continues for 1 more year after that point, so we can continue to monitor those students and their successes in college. And in the event that we have students that didn't graduate by 2026, we still have staff there to continually to support them. The Bryan ISD portion of this grant is just over $2 million. You can see the timeline from the students' 7th grade year where we are right now, from $219,000 as it grows as they move through high school and then drops back down as they get through, but a little over $2 million for this 7-year cycle. What are our next steps? We have the positions posted for the project coordinator, like I said, which would be an administrative type position that would work with Ms. Richardson and myself to help develop the program along right now with those middle school principals. We are also hiring 2 outreach specialists, one that would be housed, like I said, at either one of the middle schools. We made a huge change in what we originally proposed back in 2018. We went to A&M to say, hey, we would really like to change our portion. Our goal is for those outreach specialists to have a background in social work. In the time that we're in right now, we have got to figure out how to support the whole entire family and working with these students as they struggle through living through a pandemic in junior high school. And so we hope that then by working with the school counselors, working with myself, that we can support both the academic progress and we can support their social emotional needs. As I said, right now we're having conversations with those middle school principals to figure out, you know, we're going to hit the ground running in January. What do we really need to focus on? We will start by getting those outreach specialists into the classrooms to have conversations with the kids about how I'm here, this is how I can help you, come talk with me. We also want to open up, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, we'll see how the spring progresses, but we want to get the information out to parents as quick as possible as to what Gear Up can do for their student as they move through towards graduation. And that's all. Yes, sir.
I think you may have already answered this, but when I first read this, it struck me that, okay, this is one cohort, and that's it. And I was thinking, that almost sounds like a pilot. But now, I think I heard you say earlier that we're supposed to learn from this and try to see if we can make some of it permanent for all classes. But when I look at the $2.2 million price tag, or whatever it's going to actually cost, I'm thinking, is it realistic that we're going to even come close to being able to incorporate all that they're going to get out of this one cohort? And I'm not saying, oh, well, I don't think it's going to really end up with the result that we'd like to see. I wouldn't say, oh, well, let's don't do it. I think, we're not going to turn it down. I know we're not turning it down. We already got it. And I wouldn't even, in many years, suggest that. But is there more to it than what I just said as to how we're supposed to keep this going without the $2.2 million per class? Because that's basically what it boils down to, is $2.2 million for one class.
Correct. But there are things that we acquire during this time frame. Like part of it was to ensure we had some additional calculators for students. It is the purchasing of some of the test prep type materials, and building relationships with the local agencies around. And once you build those relationships, you may have to have some startup to get things going, but then once you've built those relationships, you still have that available to you.
If I could tag on just for a quick second. Mr. Stassi, one of the most interesting things we learned from the last Gear Up grant was something that I think you advocated for, and that was PSAT for all students. And so the prior Gear Up actually focused on ACT, I think, if that's if I'm not mistaken. And then over the years, we've of course adopted the PSAT, and the board has supported the funding of making sure every student takes the PSAT. So as we go through that 7-year process, and it is 7 years for the $2 million, so about $200,000 to $300,000 a year, we look at what works best, and we cherry pick those things and sustain those things. And we refine the things that were good, but we can do them in a different manner. And so that's kind of how we learned from the last Gear Up. When we wrote the application in 2018, we made a lot of changes most recently to this one because we've already done a lot of those things. Case in point, paying for the PSAT, and now the state of Texas also wants to help us with that, which is fantastic. But a lot of those things, yes, certainly add on, but things that were already in the plan, so to speak, to be done.
Well, that's very encouraging. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. I was hoping we get a long-term effect.
Yes, sir.
And along with that, is there a window, or what is the number of students, give a few, but how many students are we talking about that's going to work through the program?
I would say we probably have, I'm going to make this number up, Ms. Waller, but about 1,200 7th graders.
Yeah.
So we will continue to monitor them as they go through, and when some of them move to Bryant Collegiate, we'll continue to support them. If they end up at MC Harris, we'll also continue to support them there.
So when you realize how many students are involved, the financial, spread it out, makes a lot more sense.
Mr. Stassi, to go more into what you said, that is really my hope. I really want to focus with families this time around on the Gear Up. And when we start doing training on financial aid or where you can get additional supports, that we're not just helping that one little friend that's in the 7th grade. They may have additional kids that are in their family that are in lower grades, but we've helped them figure out what they can do to support their kids or to additional assistance that then that transcends to those younger students.
Donna,
Yes, ma'am.
programmatically, how is this going to cross over or crosswalk with PCC?
We hope it does very well. Christine and I have already started talking about the things, the successes that have been going on for years at PCC at Bryant Collegiate, and now us pulling those into the 2 traditional high schools. How can we continue to build on that curriculum? And so then you're supporting the students within that grade level, but then you also have that curriculum in place for the kids that are in there the next year.
I have a unique perspective because I have a child in PCC at Bryant Collegiate, and I have a child in PCC at Bryant High, and it is 100% different.
Right.
Completely different. Chloe's already applied for colleges, they've assisted her, we've already done financial aid, we're not there at Bryant High. It's not the same program.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering if we're going to add a third thing, that's coming in there. Like how many different
I don't think it would be something that's a third thing. It will be PCC, but this is what's here and is working at Bryant Collegiate. This is where we've started at Bryant High and Rudder. What adjustments can we make to help support students that is moving more towards what they're covering in Bryant Collegiate?
I like this. Congratulations on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Donna, would you, I don't know the answer to this. What if a student moves in 9th grade, let's say?
We pick them up.
Okay, that's what I thought so, but that was just something I hadn't asked.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is a discussion of the legislative priorities as defined by the administration team and what we're looking at.
we thought it would be just perhaps helpful and informative just to spend a few minutes talking about the upcoming legislative session. And, you know, of course, the pandemic has really, of course, tainted everyone's challenges in many ways. And so as a team, we have thought about a few topics that we would want to share with our elected officials, which, as you know, are Representative Rainey and Representative Casal. And so in doing that, we thought through from an academic perspective, from a funding perspective, and definitely not just asking for more money. Definitely not that, but just sometimes our elected officials tell us that when they vote on something, they don't always know exactly how that's going to be carried out, or what is that really going to look like at a school setting. And so we thought of a few topics, and so we're just going to kind of, you know, run down those ideas and see if you have any thoughts or anything you would want to share with us to make sure that, you know, we're all united in as we go forward. So I think we're starting with Ms. Barbara Ibarra.
I'm back. So I have a couple of topics relating to teaching and learning. And again, just in very brief, kind of naming what the topic is, fashion. I'll go through them with you today. The first one is in regards to school accountability, and in particular college, career, and military readiness, and how that pertains to the CTE coherent sequence takers. So in the prior accountability system, you get a full point if you had a student that successfully completed a coherent sequence in CTE. That is slated to be gone now. And so it ended actually with the class of 2020. They reduced it to a half point for the class of 2020. And in this accountability year, it will not accrue any CCMR points. And again, in all likelihood, the legislators believe that, well, we're pushing for industry certifications. Of course, it's a great aspiration. We want the same thing. But there are some CTE coherent sequences that do not result in an industry-based certification that's on TEA's list. Most specifically, law enforcement, family and community services, those sorts of things. And so we'd like the legislature to just take a look at that again and make sure that's what they intended, so that we can make sure that our students aren't unduly penalized for picking a coherent sequence that was needed in our community and that they were interested in. Also looking for this year being such an unusual year, that we hold harmless the school accountability system. We want to continue testing. We want to know where our students are so that we can help them, but we would like it to be hold harmless. We have students online, we have students at home, we have students in the school, we have students coming and going based on their family circumstances. And so if anything, there's a year, this is the year to hold harmless and allow us to only improve the situation for a school system. Perhaps you had one that had some type of intervention or sanction assigned to it. We'd like them to be able to show performance to exit those services and sanctions. And then moving forward, there's obviously a lot going on now with online school. Currently in statute, if we provide an online school, we can only pick up 3 courses worth or a half day's worth of ADA funding. And so if Mrs. Waller was fully online, we would receive half-day ADA for her. If she came half a day online and half a day on campus, then we could get a full day from Mrs. Waller, even though we're still funding to support her. We could charge Mrs. Waller for the courses, but only up to a certain dollar amount, and it wouldn't cover the costs. And so given where we are now in this day and age and with the pandemic, just seeking the legislature's oversight and taking a look at possibly guaranteeing a full day's worth of ADA, which was in place in the original legislation with the Texas Virtual School Network and then was reduced to 3 hours worth. And then moving along with that same topic, in light of the pandemic, we know, and as Mrs. Willett had mentioned, there are a lot of students in need right now, a lot of families in need, and a lot of staff in need. And so just making sure that they did tremendous work with House Bill 3 and with bringing more supports for mental health and social emotional learning. We want to see more of that continue, and in particular, possibly helping out in more regional ways so our students can receive the support that they need most directly. And then finally, from the teaching and learning and blending over into Mr. Besaw's finance area, pre-K. We're thrilled with full-day pre-K. We're thrilled, we're ecstatic. Unfortunately, it was only funded at a half-day level, with the remainder to come out of the early childhood allotment. And so we'd like them to reconsider that. It unduly looks at schools of poverty and doesn't afford us the same opportunities as possibly others. And so just another look at that legislation to consider full-day ADA funding for pre-K. And I'll
So,
turn it over to
I want to elaborate on that one.
Yes, ma'am.
If on that part, she's talking about the early childhood allotment. It is like you get so much per child, regardless of anything about the child, per child in K through 3. So you have this lump of money, and then you get half-day funded for pre-K. Well, if you're a district with a large number of pre-K, you're having to carve out of that allotment to cover your full-day pre-K. If you're a higher socioeconomic district, and you've got all that money sitting there that you can do literacy, numeracy,
The reading
things, all kinds of things, right? And yet when you have a large number of pre-K kids, you're at a disadvantage. And I'm not sure that was the intent, but that's the reality. And that's the kind of way we want to have those discussions. Sometimes the intent isn't really how it turns out. The gap actually gets bigger. That's right.
So who's going to have, who all is going to be in the meeting?
Well, that depends on what happens tomorrow.
Who from us is going to meet?
Right now?
You guys are so good at pleading or, bringing it from a mother's perspective, particularly, nothing against daddies, just you're women. And so it just, some of this doesn't make sense. And we just hope that we can get our point across. So,
I think it's Mark, it's President, Vice President,
Dad,
and
school kids.
so that'd be Don Harlan and David Stasny because he's Tasby. So, but that would be for next Monday. It's next Monday the 10th.
Well, and two of these are consistent with the TASB points also.
Mm-hmm.
So they coincide well with what we already have as far as advocacy at the state level through the Texas Association of School Boards.
Yeah.
At least I'd have to look through the rest of them, but I found two of them immediately.
And it's the same thing, Mr. Wayne, same exact thing with the superintendents, with TASA, and the same, several of these things are duplicated, but perhaps the grassroots discussion cannot hurt. We figure it cannot hurt. We'll feed them, and we will explain to them the reality.
And I just want it noted, you mentioned 2 of our representatives, but there was a third invited. And I think it's important that we mention that Charles Schwartner declined our invitation.
Okay, Money Man.
Okay, on financial things with legislative items coming up. One of the items that's been talked about some is fund balance. It's been noted that school districts in their fund balance across the state have roughly 2 times the amount of the rainy day fund. We'd just like to point out that that's an area that we've worked on hard, as a district, and many districts across the state have as well. Maintaining that, financial strength through carrying a good fund balance helps with our bond rates. Helps with things that we may need to do from time to time. A couple of examples that we have in our district alone is the CTE complex. We were able to do that because we felt we had a strong enough fund balance and be able to advance that program through that. Not exactly sure how they'd go about funding that, and there could be an equity issue with districts that have a lot of fund balance. Some districts don't have as much fund balance. So just to discuss with them about that maintaining that is feel very strongly about that we've worked hard to get that and to maintain it. Another item that's kind of in the finance area is ballot language as far as the bonds. In the last legislative session, there was an item that came out in House Bill 3 that the last item, and of course it's on our bond issue on the ballot, the last sentence has to be, "This is a tax increase." We talk about that. We just feel that it's kind of ambiguous. I mean, if you're passing a bond, there's going to be more debt. But we've worked hard to maintain our debt rate and manage our debt rate through the years and hold that steady. And so that doesn't really address that or address, the things that we've done to try to make sure that we, maintain a level of debt structure and not increase someone's taxes necessarily on a year-to-year basis. Another item on that is there's a required separate bond referendum on certain facilities. For example, stadiums, performing arts centers, housing at a school district, which, we understand that. But the second part is the AG's opinion that have come out on that also require, even for repairs, for like our performing arts center or for something that's already a facility that's been established, even the repairs, according to the AG, would fall under that. Of course, we dealt with some of that in our current bond issue that we went out for. Another item that's come up is the Chapter 313 agreements. Chapter 313 is in the Texas Tax Code. It allows for economic development, allowing a company a property tax limitation for a certain period of time. At the current time, it's 10 years. And what that does is allow the company to come in with a tax break and set up, they agree to invest a certain amount of property, plant, and equipment, facilities in the state, in an area. Also to create a certain number of jobs, qualifying jobs they have to be. That all goes through a process of an application. It's sent to the comptroller's office, and they have to approve that it is a viable, good alternative and economically beneficial to the state. And then at the end of that 10-year limitation period, hopefully you have a viable, ongoing business that's created jobs in your area and helped your economy. And then the limit goes to 100%, and so for the rest of the time that company is in business, that would be fully taxable on the tax rules.
We currently have one from 2016, Axis Pipe and Tube is currently a 313. But we've had at least 2 others reach out that are considering the Bryan area for relocating companies. So it is something that the Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation works closely with those companies looking to come to BCS area.
Right, and that is set to expire, so they would have to, I believe how it's set up, they would have to renew it in this legislative session in order for that to continue. So that would be where that would come in. The last item I think I have on finance, the COVID-19 and CARES Act funding. There's about 7 or 8 buckets of funds for CARES Act for different things. Many of those will benefit from. We've applied for. We hopefully will see the funding shortly. We have not as of yet, but one we would bring up is just that it seems like there's a misunderstanding between the federal and the state. The ESSER funds, as Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Bryan ISD was allocated $4.1 million for that particular fund. And how that came out was it will be a federal grant coming to Bryan ISD, but the state of Texas then turned around and reduced our state funding by that exact amount. And so, we won't get any actual money from that, but what we do get is we've incurred a lot of additional steps and things that we have to do to go through. For example, it's a federal grant, so we have to prove up all of our expenditures in order to even be able to gain those funds. We've had additional testing because of the amount of that grant. We've had additional testing on our audit because we went over a certain threshold, which means they have to pull an additional percentage of those items to test. We brought budget amendments at the end of the year to amend both the federal and the general fund to make those match up. And then the other thing is that, of course, the ESSER fund can be spent until I believe it's fall of 2022, but the state reduced our funds in the 2020 current fiscal year. So, you know, a lot of districts got caught off guard. We were just talking to our auditors, and he said, yeah, there were many districts scrambling trying to make that match up because it creates issues if it carries over. So it's just one of those that, you know, I don't think the federal, Mr. Cornyn's office, I think, came and, you know, they were very happy about that, but, you know, we said, well, you know, here we are. I mean, we don't know what to say, really. Thank you, but, you know.
It's very kind of you to characterize it as a miscommunication.
Well, there's been,
Yeah, those aren't
yeah,
my
there's,
words.
well,
So what is the name of the project that the state says they need that money for and we don't?
well, I mean, they just picked up that. I forget what the amount was. I actually talked to Leo Lopez, who's he's the director of he's like basically the CFO of TEA, and he said they were estimating that was going to bring in back in about $1.3 billion to the state to help balance the budget for for the next biennium.
So help balance the state's budget for education?
Well, I would hope. I don't know that
For everything.
for everybody. I don't know that they designate specifically.
Probably went to the general fund as it's
Yes,
a
well,
yeah,
obviously,
so.
Yeah. So, but and they're going to face some difficult budget challenges this year. So, but that's part of the fund balance discussion as well. You know, they're talking about the comments about everybody's going to have to row in the same direction. I mean, so they're going to discuss how they would go about having you fund some of your year or some of your this next biennium with fund balance. So,
Is Texas one of the only, did all the states do it?
I don't know that for sure. I do not know if that was what other states did on it. I've not heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is regarding just broadband technology for our students and bridging that gap. Mine, though, it's kind of nice. We've already gotten a lot of press out of the situation. And I'm not sure if y'all are aware of this, but on September 11th, many of our representatives, Representative Casal as well, signed the letter to the governor saying we need to make broadband a priority. So that's one of our things that we're going to bring up again. We do not want them to forget. We estimate about 26% of our students either don't have access because of their socioeconomic situation or because it just doesn't exist in their area. And so that's a real problem we need to fix in the state of Texas. And when you look at the state of, the number of states that have plans for broadband connectivity for their states, there are only 5 that don't have one. And we are one of those 5 in the United States that does not have a plan. So that's also on our request that we get that going and make that plan happen for us. And then my other one was one that actually came up 2 years ago. There was a bill that came up requesting that we have a location of a broadband center or office where all school districts can kind of leverage a location and people who are experts in the field so that we're not all trying to learn on our own, which is really what we've been struggling with this year. Reaching out to our partners at A&M, through the city. I've talked to numerous school districts, and we're all just trying to figure out this problem on our own. And so I'm hoping that that bill will come back up again so that we can have an office that kind of brings us all together, makes us more efficient on finding our resources, finding grants, that kind of thing. And of course, I'm going to ask for it to be at A&M because they are really experts in the field. They've been doing 5G for a year now, and y'all heard that. So those would be my 2 requests. I think that would help us immensely.
So on the Key Partner Initiative, that came up with the AARP legislative workshop a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
And one of the interesting things that came out that I wanted to share with you is that the data that we're using for broadband access is actually provided by the broadband companies. So if you have a pocket of people in this room and you 3 have broadband but the rest of us don't, they then count all of us as having broadband.
Exactly. They're using census data, so if a certain number of us have it, they're going to assume everyone in that plat
group
has it, and so they don't even count us.
So as a broad college station, the data actually shows us at 98% broadband access.
Correct. Which is not really accurate. Right.
Right.
But it's how they're counting the data, and so I wanted to share that with you. I have those reports from the ARP legislative thing that I'll try to email over to
Okay,
you.
perfect. Yes,
Um,
I'm also a member of a couple other organizations, and I'm getting that information
They're
as well.
they're starting to really look at how that data is collected, because the data is collected by a biased source.
Yep.
And that source does not want us to have broadband.
No, they don't want it to be a utility, basically,
Right.
because they don't want it to be managed by the government. And once it turns into a utility, it can be
Then
managed
it
by the
becomes-
government, and we have a lot of companies that don't want that to happen.
Right, and so, but I was really, really surprised. Also, the legislative ruling to have a key initiative partnership to where we have 8 or 10 people who are experts in the field. that
Exactly.
are paid by government that we don't all access. That's
Exactly.
coming from several different fronts now too, where last legislative session it did not.
Exactly. It was so quiet. We tried to get it
It was
through.
very under the radar.
It
This
was.
year it's much more out there, and the pandemic is responsible for a lot of that. because
Absolutely.
Minnesota has failed at broadband, Kern, Franklin has had trouble, Camp Creek can't get access.
Exactly.
You know, we have all these areas that didn't get access, and there's little pockets of money out there,
Mm-hmm.
and those money, they're loud.
Exactly. That's when we're,
That's who we need.
yep, exactly.
So good job.
Thank you. Any questions?
You're so politically correct. I'm so glad Fran isn't.
I gotta be careful. I gotta be careful.
Between you and Heather, good job, and we'll take over the rest.
So the topic that I would like to talk about is teacher certification. And through the years, the number of tests that a teacher has to take to become certified has progressively increased. And so through this last legislative session, there's now an additional test that is required of elementary teachers from pre-K through 6th grade, and it's called the Science of Teaching and Learning Reading. And so I just want y'all to understand what that means for our teachers, is that just general ed teachers for elementary had to take prior to this 2 tests. Now they're up to 3. And bilingual people that want to take the test and become certified to teach bilingual, their tests are now up to 5. And so money-wise, if you're just a general ed teacher, it's going to now cost you $368 starting January 1 to take all your tests. If you're bilingual and you're taking all those exams, the test will now cost $600 total for them to take their 5 tests. And so instead of us trying to look at ways as a state to combine things, the science of teaching and learning, that reading and learning should be in the pedagogy part or in the content part, but it doesn't have to necessarily peel back and be a 2nd or a 3rd or a 5th test for our new teachers. So therefore, number one, they're making it very hard for people to take these tests because they're highly expensive, and the turnaround for the new test is 28 days for them to score the test. And so just the turnaround itself is a long wait period, and then they have to wait to retest if they needed to 45 days between tests. And so it's just making it harder and harder for education agencies, schools, to hire certified grade teachers because people are walking away from this profession. So that's our complaint from the HR department.
Particularly bad timing.
Yeah.
So, okay, quick question. Sure. Do the testing companies get that money, or does the state get part of that money?
It's Pearson that's running this stuff, so I'm sure, I don't know.
So Pearson's lobbying the legislature to do this because they make a lot of money.
Yeah, I'll also add that there is a push to change teacher certification in Texas to use what other states are using, and the name escapes me, but it's run by Pearson. I signed up to be an evaluator of that for other states some time ago. I decided not to do it, but basically the students submit portfolios that then are evaluated by these outside folks. So it's another hurdle that becomes a barrier to teacher certification. So in a time where we are desperately in need of high quality teachers, we're just creating more barriers that cost time and money.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. The topic that I'm representing on behalf of the district for this discussion is District of Innovation. And this is regarding the exemptions from the Texas Education Code that allows flexible allowances. To remind you, this came about from the 84th session of the legislature. And of course, Brian ISD and many other public schools in the state of Texas leveraged this, and we actually became a District of Innovation in 2016. It's a very rigorous process where you have to form a local innovation committee who ultimately develops a local innovation plan that is vetted through the district's advisory council, and then we bring it into the school board for the school board to take action and approve it. We're going to ask our elected officials to implore the legislators to not change this. There's always a little bit of rumbling each year about this, in particular about the school district calendars and the start date. Right now, because we have an exemption from that code, we're able to start earlier instead of the mandate of the fourth Monday in the month of August. Another thing that's very important that falls under the District of Innovation that we rely on heavily is also teacher certification for CTE teachers in particular. We're able to hire people that come to us with field experience. I'll give you an example. A welding teacher, a person who's been a welder their entire lives, but maybe they didn't go to college to become a teacher and they don't have that certification, but we can waive that criteria and hire them based on their work experience. So we're just going to ask them to leave it alone and let school districts continue to follow that rigorous process to obtain it and to renew it, and hopefully see what happens there. Any questions with District of Innovation? All right. Next.
It's called EdTPA. You heard of it? EdTPA.
Well, good afternoon. My topic is attendance, and so we're going to hopefully have a broad conversation about attendance challenges and opportunities, and then specifically drill down on what that looks like in a pandemic. Obviously, at the beginning of the school year, they did us hold harmless for 2-6 weeks. That, unfortunately, is up, and so attendance is now counting. And so I'd love to explain to them, and we'll hopefully get the opportunity to show what all we're doing. We have a program that I think very few districts are utilizing, which is called Raw Week. And then we have 6 attendance liaisons that do home visits to make sure that if something is standing in between a parent and a student and getting what they need, they're out in the streets and making sure that they've got kind of a liaison between us and the campus, the administrator as well. And so really just a broad conversation about what attendance really looks like, how difficult it is. It's very fluid right now, as y'all are seeing. It changes. Even for kids that say they're coming face to face, that is a very fluid thing, from possible exposures to things going on within the home. And so it's very, very difficult right now to kind of calculate that. And teachers are really burdened by it. They're having to go back and find engagement activities, and some days old, and then be able to communicate that to our attendance clerks on the campus. And it's just it's very, very difficult. And to be honest with you, it really hurts the districts specifically. The state's going to come out on the good side of this, honestly, if you look at the difference between where we were this time last year and where we are this year. And it's just difficult. And so we appreciate the 2-6 weeks, the 12 weeks, but really we need it longer than that. If you look at the pandemic and what it's brought with it, the repercussions are pretty tremendous.
We need the year.
We need the year. So that's really the conversation that we want to have is, y'all, it's just very complicated, and it's not getting any easier as things go on. There's just a lot of change. There's a lot of variabilities in that. Even as you indicate, if I'm hybrid or I'm face-to-face or I'm online, it's just complicated. And really having those conversations, those 6 liaisons are very, very important, but they're time-consuming to have that conversation with the parent, for them to understand in a virtual world how they engage. It's just overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me, and I'm in it. I can't even imagine having to balance a job or multiple kids or whatever we're trying to do. And we've gotten to a point now where I think we're pretty steady. A lot of our elementary kids are back. In some cases, you're talking 40, 50, 60 kids still out at elementaries, not very many. More at the high schools, and so they've pretty much anchored in. And some of them have really figured it out, and they love it, and then other ones have yet to figure it out. And we're doing our best to try to get that help where it's needed. So that's the conversation we're going to have. Any questions?
So you're saying that we were held harmless for the first 2-6 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
And now we're using ADA for funding?
Yeah.
but we don't have an accurate way to count attendance.
We do. We have accurate ways. Unfortunately, those it's difficult.
Well, I can tell you, my son is online.
Mm-hmm.
He's still asleep. But he's 100% online. But he's 17.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Right.
Would you like to go get him?
That's one of our struggles as well.
Right.
What do we do?
So it's like he does his work, he gets it turned
Yes,
in, but he's not going to log in
Right.
and sit there.
Yes.
There's also some things that TEA could do to help us a little bit with and Barbara's the queen of that expertise, but they require that the login has to be every day, and this, that, whereas if the child worked ahead, got some things done, no, it has to be every day to count for attendance. There's some things that really kind of handcuff us.
Right, and it's really hard to motivate the kids because you're looking at kids that are capable of doing the work, they're able to get all their assignments on Monday, get them all finished, and then play video games all night and sleep all day.
Right. They have a hard time understanding that why. It's difficult to explain that why it's this way. And
yeah.
when I get my work done in one day, but yet you're going to ask me to do the following, a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 12-year-old, they don't get that. And I don't really, I mean, we just explain it and it is what it is. And, but, you know, you leave and then, you know, they don't, I mean, I don't blame them, really, honestly. I get it as well.
So in a lot of small districts, as you heard all last week,
Yes,
they're saying, nope, it's not working academically, it's not working attendance-wise, everybody come back in the face. Well, in a small district, you know, that's easier, but we still want to give the students who have a great-grandmother living with them and the student themselves are compromised, and we're trying our best, but you know, the easiest thing in the world would be, okay, now, from now on, we're all person to person back the way it used to be. But, you know, health-wise, that's tough, and so we're the ones caught in the middle.
We are. The districts, we're specifically at a disadvantage. Like, we're the ones that are being hurt by with the practice. And so you know, in the most generous of sense, I don't know that they understand that, so we're going to talk to them about it. And I think as we talk about what we do as a district to support our parents and support our kids, like, it's not like they're out there and they're on their own flapping in the wind. I mean, we've got all kinds of supports, 2 dropout prevention specialists at the high schools that are targeting those kids because, you know, I mean, they're working with them. Credits count, attendance matters. Like, it matters everywhere, but it genuinely, as you well know, matters there most of all. And then as you work your way down, we have the 4 guys spread out between the middle schools, intermediates, and elementaries just to work with families. And so talk with them and try to figure out and connect them with what they need. Is it broadband access? Is it computers? Do you not know how to log in? What are the obstacles that are there? And sometimes there's motivation stuff, and sometimes the kid gets it. Like, it works beautifully for some, and for others, it just isn't. And so it's a long conversation that you've got to get in front of a parent. That's not always easy to do. Our principals are really great. They're leading the way and having direct conversations. The teachers are as well. But really, that weight falls on the teachers, and it's just hard. I mean, to navigate and to have all of that fluidity that's involved with it. And so, you know, the state could really step in. They could support us with this. I mean, I want our legislatures, I want to believe the best, and that they could just say, like, this is what we need. Like, we need to do this because it would be tremendous for them we still got to connect. We're not ever going to stop trying to reach our parents. We're not ever going to stop trying to get them to you know, add value and to make sure they know the content, because we know ultimately down the line they're our kids and we'll be held responsible. But the actual attendance, the money piece, that's where it's like, you should take this off the table, right?
One thing I will say, kind of piggybacking on Dr. Merrill's comment, that it is frustrating, you know, as we kind of talk about the student who really could get, you know, 2 days worth of work done for a particular subject on a singular day, and then they don't log in on the subsequent day and they're counted as absent. The good news is TEA has been hearing from a lot of different districts across the state and superintendents in particular, and so they have extended that hold harmless for the third 6 weeks, but that's where they've stopped. And so for the first semester, we do have hold harmless, and so it does need to go to the legislative level next to get us the next semester, because we don't foresee anything radically changing for the spring semester in terms of opportunities and offerings for our students, from hybrid to online to on campus. And the same, traditional funding rules at the state level are still in place. And so just extending that same opportunity for a hold harmless throughout the system, or by the designation of they've completed the work arranged for this week, they've completed the content for this week at the teacher's discretion, and what that might look like. But lots of opportunities where they could be flexible.
So basically, we need the year.
We need the year.
That's what we think. If we were in charge.
We need the year. Well, I got it.
Okay, I'm back. My next topic is about charter schools. Knowing that Texas, the state of Texas already leads the nation as having the second most charter schools, we are concerned that the Texas Education Agency has already talked about and started to authorize the expansion of charter schools. And we are concerned about the negative funding implications that has, not on just Bryan ISD, but all Texas public schools. So we're going to ask our elected officials to implore the legislators to make good decisions for all Texas public schools and hold the charter schools accountable for the same conditions and the same standards when it comes to curriculum and instruction and accountability and funding and serving all students. So we really are just asking for a level playing field when it comes to charter schools. Any questions?
We should add, because it's currently not that way.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of inconsistent practices, so there's a lot of room for improvement. Good point.
I can't imagine.
So obvious to me is that it's pretty much impossible to be a level playing field unless they provide transportation throughout the district or throughout the area. That's a big reason why kids may go to public schools to get transportation. I'm not even sure what they do with the meals, whether they're really on free and reduced lunch or not. They may be, I don't know, but that's, I guess, a little easier for them to provide. But once you do that, and of course on top of that, we all hear the stories about discipline and so on too, that they're not supposed to be, but they're out the door if they don't behave. And you go to public schools, regular public schools, if you're not behaving. And so we can, and that again is something maybe they could deal with if they don't. But again, the transportation is the part that's somewhat impossible. And not to say that, all our kids are riding the bus are a problem. The reality is that a lot of your poor kids from poor families, maybe struggling, maybe have parents that don't have the education to help their kids, all those that we are committed to helping, they almost all end up with us and not charter schools for that reason. And so that's kind of hard to get that across. Sometimes it seems like they don't want to pay attention to that. That's just something that doesn't necessarily jump out at people until you really examine it.
Yes, good point. There is Texas Education Code, but it's not always, the compliance piece is not consistent, and your transportation point is well taken.
Okay, up next, Vicky.
Yeah, I have lobbying as my topic, and for me, I think the subject matter that's really important to this is representation, which I think this is what it's all about. The lobbying bill has been reintroduced, this legislation, to reduce the amount of lobbying influence that happens. And then another thing that's also affected by this is whether we're paying professional dues or fees for people in organizations, especially educators. And so that can be used as an incentive for hiring. And that kind of goes back to Carol's point about it being a little difficult to hire people when you don't present a way that can allow them to feel adequately represented. And in lobbying, that's what we'll be talking about. Ways to maintain our presence and maintain that fairness and exceptions that apply to us.
Well, and if I understand it right, the legislators were not in favor of doing a payroll deduction.
Right.
For teachers to be able to pay their dues, their
Right.
professional dues, because part of that dues is dedicated to paying lobbyists for those organizations.
Right.
So that seems rather intrusive from my perspective.
And it's just another hurdle that adds to that representation, and that's like another area for educators to feel like, well, I can't get this, or there's a reason, there's a hurdle, there's an obstacle that's preventing me from being able to voice my concerns, not only as an individual, but even for the district, by there being additional restrictions on how and what we can do to lobby for our educators too. So it's like a twofold.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, at least last word I got on it, at least, was that Texas Association of School Boards and TASA both, Texas Association of School Administrators, are lobbyists because they advocate. And so when you hear the word lobbyist, that's not the first thing that jumps into my mind is the Texas Association of School Boards. And yes, they do lobby, if you want to use that term, but they don't bear any resemblance to what we think of as the lobbyist who's dining legislators and has big budgets to go in and try to influence people on an individual basis. They are following the wishes, of course, I'm much more familiar with TASB, but certainly follow the wishes of the districts, and it's a very democratic process in terms of recognizing those issues, and we could maybe somehow afford to do it on our own, but good grief, every little district in the state, that there's no way they can effectively deal with all the complications of the legislative process. So again, when you hear that word lobbyist, it sounds like, oh, well, maybe that's not so bad, and then when that wipes out those two huge services that we get from TASA and TASB, that would be a big blow.
I think I would like to throw in there, as soon as the legislators get back to writing their own bill, we'll get back to, maybe having, not needing the representation, right? Because the bills are so complicated.
Right.
They're not written by the legislators, they're written by advocates. And it's not fair for us to have to interpret everything, down to the final, I mean, it would take, literally takes it takes an expert in that field to be able to decipher what's being written into some of these laws. So if they can get back to clean English laws written by the legislators and not lobbyists or activists, then maybe we wouldn't need a lobbyist on our behalf as well.
I agree with you. I think that is a very valid point, and I also think that's something that should be discussed in terms of those hurdles that we have to jump over just to have the minimum amount of representation at this point, is what it feels like.
That's it for legislative priorities.
All right.
That's what the team thought of.
Those are great.
That's all?
This was really good though. I mean, this was so informative. Thank you for putting all that together.
Accountability thing, I'm saying, one thing, I'll keep it super short, is it's going to be more than this year in terms of the impact on accountability, because these kids aren't going to catch up in 1 year. So it's going to be, unfortunately, longer than that. Probably all we can ask for is the entire year right now, but good grief. Again, the commissioner, again, I mentioned this before, presented this thing about showing by zip code how fairly wealthy families, they were coping with it a whole lot better in terms of their kids' advancement than the kids that were from poor neighborhoods. And so the gap is just going like this as starting next spring. I said I'd keep it short.
Right. If there's no other discussion at this time regarding the legislative priorities, then we'll move on to business services and consider approval of the school leaders liability insurance annual renewal.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The school leaders liability insurance current policy expires November 30th of 2020. We have Mr. Graham from ANCO Insurance, and of course Ronnie, if we have any questions on this to help through. But ANCO helped inquire or requested quotes and additional companies to quote this for us. received several declinations. Several companies stated they couldn't meet the terms and conditions or premiums of the current carriers. The current premium or current policy has a $5 million shared limit on the errors and omissions liability, employment practices liability, and includes $500,000 on the cyber liability coverage. The errors and omissions coverage that's expiring is a $50,000 deductible. The recommendation at this point would be if we renewed it at the exact same limits and deductibles, the renewal would be approximately $103,000, so a $20,000 increase. In reviewing our history on this policy, there's been one claim that would have affected that deductible. So our recommendation is that we would raise the deductible from $50,000 to $100,000 for the employment practices liability part, and therefore saving $30,000. So the renewal on that policy would then be $73,073. So essentially, raising the deductible $50,000 to save $30,000 on this year's policy. And that would be with AIG, who was the current carrier, I believe, as well.
They're pretty good at math, that's good.
Only when I have my calculator.
I move approval of AIG Bryan ISD School Leaders Liability Insurance Carrier as presented.
Second. A motion by Dr. Harlan, a second by Mr. Stasny. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And we move into 2, consider approval of the group benefit risk pool medical stop loss insurance carrier for plan year 2021.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have Mr. Roy Donalds and Stacy Becker here today from Antco Insurance on this one to help with this as well. And this is the policy, our medical stop loss insurance, which kicks in when a claim on our self-insured group policy goes over the $325,000 deductible, then it would kick in and pick up at that point. The expiring policy is $1,047,000. And that is with Berkeley. We again went out for quotes on this and received. I believe you have the quotes that we received. The two that we are looking at were Blue Cross Blue Shield, which had a quote of $1,140,000, and the other one that we're recommending today was Pan American, which has a premium of $1,152,000. The reason to go with the little higher $12,000 deductible on that, or the $12,000 additional premium on that, is on the very bottom line of that. You can see across the bottom the maximum cost liability. If you look at the Pan American on there, the maximum cost to the plan would be $25,659,000. On the Blue Cross Blue Shield, it could be up to $27,098,000. So in essence, we're paying the extra $12,000 of premium to leverage that $1.4 million at the top end if our claims were to go higher this year. We feel that probably is the best value and warranted for the district based on the things that are going on with COVID and the uncertainty that we have with some of these claims and how this is going to go play out once the hopefully COVID goes away. I know I keep saying that every time I'm up here. We hope that that's going to happen, but there'll be elective procedures and then some of the complications that we fear may come with results of COVID. We feel that that's a better value for the district.
I'll move approval of Pan America as the medical stop loss insurance carrier for the plan year 2021 is presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stasny, a second by Dr. Harlan. Dr. Harlan, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, and that will conclude the business, and we'll move into closed session.
We'll just stay here. Is that all right? If everybody will just stay here.
The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code Chapter 551.074, personnel matters, and real estate today.
Brief.
Okay,
It's just, everything will be pretty brief. Our close won't be very long.
.072. Nobody will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 1:50. The board reconvened in open session at 2:16. No action was taken in closed session. We have one motion to take up.
I move approval of Dr. Adam Selena as the Director of Bilingual, ESL, and Migrant Education as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Harlan, a second by Mrs. Dwayne. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and if there's no further conversation, we are adjourned.